Hello and welcome to another video that no one asked for. My last video was about the last couple of criterions that I bought, so I thought I'd keep the physical media theme going and talk about my entire Blu-ray collection. Right now my shelf is empty because I thought that instead of just boringly show you my Blu-rays one at a time, I would slowly fill up my shelves with the Blu-rays. So I don't want this video to be too long, so without any further ado, let's get going. First we have 1981, 1987, and 1991. This is a Quebecer comedy trilogy. Really actually pretty good comedies, and now it's a tetralogy actually because the new film 1995 came out this summer, so I'll have to get the Blu-ray eventually. 2001 A Space Odyssey, one of the few movies I have in 4K. I actually don't even have a 4K Blu-ray player, so I'm pretty glad that this got the Blu-ray for it, the actual Blu-ray. Addams Family and Addams Family Values. I think the Addams Family movies are really good. They haven't aged a bit. They're amazing comedies. They're really fun films. Next, this one's pretty interesting. It's the Apocalypse Tetralogy by Piotr Solskin. I have no idea if this is how you pronounce it. This is from Vinegar Syndrome. This was a complete blind buy for me because I just saw Mubi talk about it recently, and it looked really interesting. They're 1980s Polish sci-fi movies that all have like a pretty important message on like Polish politics at the time. I've only seen the first one and it was really fascinating, so I'm really excited to get to the other films. Next we have L'Âge des Ténèbres, or Age of Darkness in English, another Quebecer movie. This one's by Denis Arcand, who's one of the great Quebecer directors. He's the only one to have won an Oscar actually, not for this movie. This movie it's actually pretty mid. I'm not really a huge fan of it. Amadeus, one of the best biopics of all time. Arrival, another Quebecer director. I'm sure you all know about him. One of his best movies, honestly, in my opinion. Next we have Legend of Korra, which I put in the Ace because it's like the sequel to Avatar, The Last Airbender. I have the Avatar Blu-ray, but I'm going to show it a bit later. You'll understand why. I actually haven't seen... I've seen like 3 episodes, I think, of Korra. I'll have to get to that at some point. Baby Driver, I'm a huge Edgar Wright fan. I've got all of his movies. This one's not really my favorite, but he's only made like 6 movies, and I think they're all good, so it's among my favorites in a way. The original Batman by Tim Burton, I haven't seen this in years, but I have a good memory of it. And another fun Batman movie, the original Batman movie from the 1960s, which has aged really badly, but it's really fun to watch actually. Beetlejuice by Tim Burton. I used to be a really big Tim Burton fan as a teenager, so you'll see some more of his movies. Big Hero 6, which I haven't seen since it came out, but in my memory, it's one of the last good, like really good Disney movies that came out. Big Lebowski, which obviously is one of the best Coen Brothers movie. Boys in the Hood, a great drama about social injustice in America. Castaway by Robert Zemeckis. Don't have a lot to say. I've actually never seen this entirely, so I'll have to get to that at some point, I guess. Close Encounter of the Third Kind. This is a 30th anniversary set that I bought when my local video store closed down, and it's pretty cool. It's got like 3 different edits of the movie. I've only seen the original theatrical release, so I'll have to watch the others as well. Then this is pretty interesting. This is a Quebecer TV show, a comedy show called Le Cœur a ses raisons. So in English it would be The Heart Has Its Reasons, with Marc Labrèche, who's the main actor of Days of Darkness, which I talked about. This is a parody of soap opera shows. It's extremely absurd. It's really, really good comedy. Because here in Quebec, like not to brag, but we're some of the best in the world in terms of comedy. And this is, along with Always Sunny in Philadelphia, this is the funniest show that I've ever seen in my entire life. Corpse Bride, not the best Tim Burton movie, but pretty good. Next, we have Crazy by Jean-Marc Vallée, who you may know for directing Dallas Buyers Club. He's another Quebecer director, and this is one of, if not the best Quebecer movie I've ever seen. It's a coming-of-age movie set in the 70s about this guy who is gay, but doesn't really want to accept it because he's from a very conservative family that is pretty homophobic as well. It's a very good movie. This is the Dark Knight trilogy. I actually haven't seen those in a really long time, so I'd like to rewatch them at some point, especially the first and third one. Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. I actually bought this before watching it. I should rewatch it, but honestly, I really wasn't that impressed with it. I just really wasn't a huge fan of it. Of course, the special effects and everything are great, but I thought the acting and just the flow of the movie in itself, I'll say it, I was bored watching it. But I'll try to rewatch it at some point. Now, this may say Sang-Froid, but this is only the French version of Drive with Ryan Gosling, which is another movie that I'll try to rewatch because I really wasn't that impressed with it when I first saw it. Dumb and Dumber, one of the great comedies of all time. And now it's time for the Dune section. So we have the original Dune by David Lynch, which I love David Lynch. This movie kind of sucks. It's a movie that tries so much to explain the story, but spends so much time explaining the story that it becomes completely like impossible to understand. So obviously, if you want a better version of Dune, you need to watch both of Denis Villeneuve's movie. I actually got the first one on 4K as well, because it was cheaper than the actual Blu-ray on Amazon, which is crazy. And then Dune Part 2, which is, well, the year's not over, but it's the movie of the year, really. Edward Scissorhands, which is one of the best Tim Burton movies. And in fact, it could have been the best Tim Burton movie if it wasn't for Ed Wood, which is one of the Tim Burton movies that no one talks about. It's one of the great biopics about movies. It's about Ed Wood, who was a known as probably the worst director of all time. But he was a guy that was so passionate about movies, and this plays a lot with the contrast of like being really passionate yet not being good. It's very fascinating movies. Another great Johnny Depp role. Really good movie, highly recommended. 8th Grade by Bo Burnham, which, as someone who was in 8th grade when this movie came out, is extremely difficult to watch because I just relate to it almost too much, and it brings me back to not fun times in my life. So, but this only speaks to how well made this movie is. Next is The End of the Tour, the biopic about David Foster Wallace, who I think is a very fascinating author, and the movie was really interesting as well. Highly recommended. Pretty underrated in my opinion. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is one of the best movies ever made. That's just a fact. Sorry. I don't have much to say about it. Everything's already been said. Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is another, like, one of the great movies of the decade so far. Eyes Wide Shut, the last Stanley Kubrick movie, and honestly, a really good movie as well. Not my favorite from him, but I mean, it's Kubrick. You know, what do you want me to say? The Fabelmans, the last Steven Spielberg movie, which is much more than a movie about like his love of cinema. It's also a movie about his family. It's really well made, really well acted. It was one of my favorite movies from last year's Oscar race. Next one's pretty interesting. It's a movie called Farador, which is another Quebecer comedy. I have not seen this yet, but it's based on a short film, more of a like sketch that was pretty popular on the early internet, like pre-YouTube. I think this came out in 2005. Well, the original skit, and then like last year they made an actual movie from this, which was pretty weird. But I'm very intrigued to watch this movie. I hope it's good. The Favorite by Yorgos Lanthimos, who's in my opinion one of the best directors working right now in Hollywood, and one of the best performances of all time by Olivia Colman in this movie. I love Olivia Colman. The Fifth Element, which is like, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it's a pretty fun movie. Not the best Luc Besson movie, not the worst, that's for sure. Fight Club, haven't seen this in 4 years, haven't seen it since I first saw it, and when I first saw it, I immediately put it in my top 10 films of all time, so I really need to rewatch this. Forrest Gump, this used to be my favorite movie for a long time, and then I actually started to watch a lot of movies, and it just made me realize that, I mean, this is a really good movie, but it's just pretty basic in its filmmaking. Doesn't really do too much, but you know, it's a good movie. It's a movie that everyone loves, you know. Full Metal Jacket, a really good Kubrick film. The Game, not my favorite David Fincher. I should probably rewatch this as well. This goes for a lot of the movies here, but it's Fincher. It's a really good movie. What do you want me to say? Get Out, which is one of the best horror movies of all time, pretty much. It completely changed Hollywood's perception of the genre, and it helped create this new subgenre of horror movies, which I guess a lot of people call the A24 horror films, which is funny because this is not an A24 movie, but it goes in the same wave as like Hereditary by Ari Aster and a lot of those more auteur horror films. This is a really good movie. I love it. Oh, the original Ghostbuster. I've only seen this once. It's a really fun movie. I'm pretty fond of those classic 80s comedies, and this is a really good one. I love Rick Moranis as well. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I've seen the first 30 minutes of this movie. I thought it looked really good, but for some reason I stopped watching it. I think that was like 2 years ago, and I haven't seen it, like I haven't finished it yet. I'll have to get to that at some point. Goodfellas, which is in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. It might be controversial. I think it's Martin Scorsese's best film. I think it's like the best. I also think it's the best mafia movie ever made. Yes, even better than The Godfather. Like, maybe not objectively, but that's, in my opinion, like the best mafia film. To me, it's a perfect movie. Speaking of which, the Godfather trilogy. Now, I know this is probably going to be blasphemy. I've only seen the first one. I haven't seen the second one, and I've heard that the third one is not as great, but I'm gonna try to watch the other two soon. I'm planning on watching the second one like next week or something, so I'll get back to that. If you want to see what I think of it when I do watch it, you can follow me on Letterboxd, which is going to be in the description. Next, I don't know why I have this. The Greatest Showman. I bought this like Close Encounter when my local video store closed down. I don't like this movie. I don't even know why I have it. Now, I don't watch this movie. It sucks. It really sucks. The Green Mile, which is in the same category as Forrest Gump, it's like kind of it's a really well-made movie. You know, it's one of those movies that anyone can get into. I don't like it as much as I did the first time I saw it, but it's a really, really good movie. Oh, next one is Grindhouse by Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. If you don't know what this is, it's a double feature, which is like, it's really a tribute to the double features that used to be in theaters like back in the, I guess, 70s and 80s. So there's one movie directed by Quentin Tarantino, which is Death Proof, and another directed by Robert Rodriguez, which is Planet Terror. And in between, there's also trailers by some other directors. I know there's one by Edgar Wright, there's one by Rob Zombie, one by Eli Roth, and I'm not sure about the others. I think there's 5 in total. I haven't seen this yet. It looks really fascinating. I think I'll try to watch this pretty soon. This one's kind of a random one. It's Hard Corner, Le Film. It's a movie made by a French YouTuber that I used to watch when I was a teenager. I actually got to meet him at a convention. So it's one of the few DVDs that I have signed. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this movie. The Harry Potter movie. The Harry Potter movie are extremely important to me. They are the movies that I've seen the most time in my entire life. I used to be the biggest Harry Potter fan when I was a kid. And you know what? I still am. The more I look into it, the more I realize that there's a lot of plot holes. Let me say, there's a lot of plot holes in Harry Potter, but a lot. There's so many inconsistencies. The more you think about the different sides of the story, the more you realize that a lot of it doesn't really make sense. So I'll just blame that on J.K. Rowling. She made really good novels, and the movies are amazing, but you know, that's that. The Hateful Eight, which is actually one of the few Quentin Tarantino movies that I haven't seen yet. I'll have to get to that at some point. Actually, I think the only Tarantino films that I haven't seen are The Hateful Eight and Death Proof. So it's funny that the only ones I haven't seen I also own on Blu-ray, so really I need to get to it at some point. Heavenly Creature by Peter Jackson. I bought this at a record store this summer, but I haven't seen it yet, so I'll have to get to that. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is one of the best comedies of all time. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this comes with a documentary about the making of the movie, which I know it had a very complicated production, so I'm very curious to watch this movie. Next is Hook by Steven Spielberg with Robin Williams. The Host by Bong Joon-ho, which is one of the best Bong Joon-ho films in my opinion, one of the best Korean films in my opinion. It's the best example of what a good Korean movie is, because it mixes so many different genres, so many different things into one. It's a comedy, it's a drama, it's a horror movie, it's a social commentary film, it's a movie about family, it's a movie about monsters. You've got everything in this movie, and it's so well made, so well directed. It's a true masterpiece that needs to be talked about in the same way that people talk about Parasite or Memories of Murder. Hot Fuzz, the best movie of the Cornetto trilogy, one of the best movies that Edgar Wright made. It's a really, really, really good comedy. Really well directed as well. Next is How I Met Your Mother, the entire series, which I really, really like. I think How I Met Your Mother is one of the best sitcoms that came out in the last couple of decades. It's both a really funny show, but that can really have a lot of very emotional moments that really grab you. I think it's really well written, really well made, really well acted. It's a good show. Ichi the Killer, a nice, gory Japanese horror film. Highly recommended. A lot of fun. Inception, which probably is my favorite Christopher Nolan film. Like, it really blew me off when I first saw it. Inglourious Basterds, one of the best Quentin Tarantino movies as well. Love the ending, love the beginning of the movie, and I love what's in between. That's it. The Iron Giant, I bought this a while ago and I haven't seen it, but I've heard so many things about this movie. I think I'm gonna love this. Isle of Dogs by Wes Anderson, which was actually the first Wes Anderson film that I ever watched, and not his best, but it's still a really good movie. Like, Wes Anderson knows what he's doing. Next we have Dr. No and Tomorrow Never Dies, two James Bond movies. I'm not even sure why I have those. I never really got into James Bond. Maybe I should watch them. I've only seen like 2 or 3 James Bond films. I'm just not that into it, which is weird because I love British movies. I feel like this is something that I could love, but I'm not really interested by it. Jaws, which might be the best Steven Spielberg movie. Like, this is astonishingly good. One of the great horror movies of the 70s. Jumanji, another great 90s comedy. I love Robin Williams as well, like anyone. Kill Bill Part 1 and 2. Of course, the first one is better than the second one, but as a whole, they're one of the best things, in my opinion, that Quentin Tarantino has ever made. Even though I probably should rewatch this because I haven't seen this since I saw Lady Snowblood, and I know that he took a lot from Lady Snowblood to make this, but still really good. Knives Out, which I'm a huge fan of Knives Out. It's one of those movies, like, because I have ADHD, and I always end up, like, even if I love the movies, I always end up looking at my watch to see, like, how much is left of the movie. This is one of the few movies I saw in recent years that I didn't even look at my watch. Like, I was so entertained throughout the entire movie. And of course, entertaining is not the only thing that you should try to achieve when making a movie, but I think if a movie is able to be entertaining enough, that should be like a positive point, and it should be mentioned when reviewing this movie. So, such a fun film. I also love Glass Onion, but I'm pretty sure it's not available on Blu-ray. If it was, I'd love to get it. Jim Henson's Labyrinth, which I bought this at the same time as Heavenly Creatures. I haven't seen it yet again, but it looks fun. It's got David Bowie. I like David Bowie. And then Lady Bird, which I saw this year for the first time, was really good. Really liked it. The Lego Movie, which really impressed me when I first saw it. It's as everyone said, it's much more than just a Lego commercial. It's actually a really good story. It's the best, honestly. It's probably the best commercial that was ever made. Because ever since I saw it, I've just been really wanting to make Legos. Life Itself, which is the only documentary that I have in my entire collection. I need to get more, but this is a documentary about Roger Ebert, which came out like just after his death. And this is half a movie about his career and his love of movies, and half a movie about his tragic battle with cancer, which left him completely disfigured. And it's a surprisingly tough watch, but it's a very fascinating movie for a great man that did really cool things for cinema. Léon the Professional, the best Luc Besson movie by far. There's not even a question. A really fun 90s action film, which started Natalie Portman's career. Really good film. Little Miss Sunshine, which is one of the best feel-good movies. I use quotation marks because it's always said, like, it's always counted as a feel-good movie, and I get why it would be, but it's such a sad movie as well. There's something that's so crushing about it. The best performance I've ever seen by Steve Carell too. Mad Max Fury Road, which is one of the best action movies that came out in the last 10 years. I wasn't a huge fan of Furiosa. I thought that this one was a lot better, but it's obvious that George Miller knows what he's doing. The Matrix 1 through 4. I've only seen the first 2. I think that the first movie is one of the most important movies that came out in the last 30 years. Like, it's really unbelievable just how much this movie changed Hollywood. And it's such a good... I resaw it like a few weeks ago, and I really was impressed, like, just at how good it is. And the second one, while it's not nearly as good as the first one, I think it's pretty good. Like, there's some really great scenes in this. I mean, the highway scene, like, is one of the most impressive action sequences I've ever seen. Men in Black, haven't seen this in years. I don't really have much to say about it. I mean, it's all right, you know. It's a fun comedy, you know. Midsummer, which is obviously a fantastic horror movie. Not my favorite Ari Aster movie, though. I did prefer Hereditary, and I think I preferred Boys Afraid. So I'll have to get those in my collection at some point. It's the only Ari Aster movie I have. Mrs. Doubtfire, as I said, I love Robin Williams, and this is a hilarious movie. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. This is a movie that I discovered back in film school. It's about Jimmy Stewart, who just started working as a senator, and he plays a pretty naive character that tries to change things but quickly realizes that the system doesn't want him to. And it's I was really surprised by this. It's by Frank Capra as well, so it's the same team as Life is Beautiful. I actually like this more than Life is Beautiful. This is one of the great pre-1950s movies, in my opinion. Mummy by Xavier Dolan, which is one of the best Quebecer movie ever made. If you haven't seen this, you need to watch it. One of the best movies about mother and son relationship. Nightcrawler, which is one of the movies that I see most people talking on like Instagram and TikTok. I haven't seen it yet, actually, so I will have to get to it. The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a great Halloween movie and a great Christmas movie, a great musical, a great stop-motion film. It's a great of many things. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I saw this when it first came out, and I really wasn't a huge fan of it. And the more I hear other people talk about it, the more I realize that I just don't think I got it. So I should rewatch this. OSS Sunset, this is a French comedy that's kind of a parody of James Bond. It's pretty absurd, it's really funny, it's good. Paranorman, which is also a really good stop-motion film, though I haven't seen it since it came out, which was like, I think, a decade ago. I'm 21 years old, by the way, so I think I should probably mention this, just to give some example of like, when I say like a couple of years ago, just to compare like how old I was at the time. I was a kid when I saw this, you know, so I should probably rewatch this, but in my memory, like, it was a really good movie. Pan's Labyrinth, this I have a much fresher memory of. I saw this a few times in high school, and it was the first Guillermo del Toro film that I saw, and it's really good. Phantom Thread by Paul Thomas Anderson, not his best, but really good. Phineas and Ferb the movie, Across the Second Dimension. My after-school routine every day when I was in elementary school was I'd get back from school, turn on TV, and it was a SpongeBob episode and then a Phineas and Ferb episode. And when I saw that there was a Phineas and Ferb movie coming out, I was really excited for it. It's the first movie that ever made me cry. That's an interesting fun fact. The ending for this movie made me cry quite a lot when I was a kid. It's a really fun movie, and I think Phineas and Ferb is a really, really good show. Prince of Egypt, that's an amazing animated movie. It was made, actually, I think it was made at the same time as Shrek was made. I think this is like the last 2D animation movie that DreamWorks did. It's a surprisingly amazing film coming from DreamWorks. Like, it's the same level of quality that you would expect from a Disney movie, except that this movie had a lot more balls than Disney would have, because Disney would have never made a movie about the Bible, and DreamWorks did a great one about the Bible, so you should watch it if you haven't seen it. Pulp Fiction, everything's already been said about Pulp Fiction. What do you want me to say? It's really well written. It's one of Quentin Tarantino's best. It's eternally quotable. Yeah, I love it. And now it's time to move to the second shelf. Purple Rain, starring Prince. This is a movie based on the record Purple Rain by Prince. It's a pretty ridiculous movie. It's not amazing, but whenever there's a scene with Prince on, it's just the coolest thing ever. At the end, when he starts playing Purple Rain, I had chills. It's pretty crazy. Prince was one of the greatest performers of all time. Ready Player One. This is pretty funny because it's one of the rare instances where I actually haven't seen this yet. I have read the book. It's in there somewhere, and I thought that the book kind of sucked. So it doesn't really make me want to watch this. I'll probably get to it at some point. But I know there were some really mixed opinions about this movie. So considering that I already didn't like the book, I'm not sure if I'm going to like this movie, but who knows. Then is the Rocky movies. I've only seen the first one. I need to get to the other ones, even though I heard especially like the fifth one isn't great. I'll have to get to that at some point. I've only got the DVDs, but I really want to get that Blu-ray set, which looks really good. Next, we were talking about Rocky. Now it's the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is such a great musical. Time Warp is one of the best musical songs I've ever heard. It's an incredibly fun movie. It's a very sexual movie, a surprisingly sexual movie. And considering that it came out in 1975, it's a very groundbreaking film for LGBTQ movies. So it's a really, really important film, actually. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? That's another fun 80s comedy. I saw it a while ago, and I really like it. The special effects have not aged a bit. The mix between live action and animation is still really impressive to this day. Oh, now it's a really fun one. So a couple of years ago, I wanted to make. I had another YouTube channel. I wanted to make a video about bad movies. So I wanted to talk about The Room. And in order to get the footage, I needed to get the Blu-ray from The Room. So I bought it off of Tommy Whistle's actual website. And there were some issues with the shipping. So basically, I got an email at some point saying, like, you're gonna get the Blu-ray later than you were supposed to. So in exchange, what we can do is we can get you a free signed copy. So I said, fuck yeah. So I don't know if you're going to see it, but I have a Blu-ray signed by the man himself, Tommy Wiseau. It says, to my friend Phil, be yourself, love, Tommy Wiseau. And this is one of the best things that I have, just in all the things that I have in my life. This is so cool. One of my prized possessions. The movie sucks, but like, this is so cool to have it signed by fucking Tommy Wiseau. Ruby Volume 2. I got that at a record store like many years ago. I used to really like Ruby. Unfortunately, the people who made Ruby decided, hey, let's turn this show into a terrible show. And that's what they did. Scooby-Doo 1 and 2. They're such fun movies. They're really, really cool. And I used to watch those movies a lot when I was a kid, obviously. And I have great memories of watching those movies. Next is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I think is Edgar Wright's best movie. It's one of the most fun, one of the most entertaining movies I've ever seen. It's a great time. You can't be bored watching this movie. It's impossible. Seven by David Fincher, which I was really surprisingly shocked by this movie when I first saw it, and not even for the famous scene at the end, but for another scene more in the middle of the movie, which I never hear anyone talk about, but that really like kind of fucked me up when I first saw it. And not to spoil it, it's about a guy in a bed. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Shaun of the Dead, another great Edgar Wright film. It's a true classic. It's a great comedy, one of the best zombie movies, not even just zombie parodies, one of the best zombie movies ever made. Which is funny because it's like probably one of the least dangerous zombie invasions I've ever seen. Like the whole thing lasts 24 hours at max. Oh, this one's gonna make every IMDb user really happy. The Shawshank Redemption, which has been #1 on IMDb for decades. It's a really good movie. I don't think it's the best movie of all time, but you know, it's a classic. The Shining, that's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 3 or my top... It's at the very least in my top 5. I think it's Stanley Kubrick's best movie. I think it's one of the most fascinating movies I've ever seen. There's so much you can get from this movie. I actually read the book this year as well, and it's a really good book, even though there's a lot of differences in the adaptation. So I actually would like to make a video about it. I was going to make a video about it, and in order to talk more about the adaptation, I thought it would be pretty cool to get the DVD of The Shining miniseries, which was written by Stephen King, and apparently really sucks. But apparently it sucks, but it's much more accurate to the book than the movie. So I want to make a video about the difference between like making a good adaptation and making a good movie. So if you're interested by that, comment below. I think I'll try to make this next year probably. The Simpson movie, a really good cartoon adaptation. It's a really fun film. It's like a really good long Simpson episode. And A Silent Voice, which is an anime movie that came out a couple of years ago. It's really good, and it's a very touching movie. It's a movie that will make you cry. Snowpiercer by Bong Joon-ho. I actually really like Snowpiercer. I think it's kind of underrated. Of course, you know, it was his first movie that he made in America, so he had some issues with that. But in general, I think it's a really solid movie, and I really like it. You're probably not going to see much if I just show you this, but this is The Social Network, which is one of the best, if not the best, David Fincher film that I've seen. One of the last really good biopics that came out. And Jesse Eisenberg and Andrew Garfield are both amazing in this. South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut. This is the South Park movie. Another great example of a good cartoon adaptation on the big screen. I love South Park, and again, just like The Simpsons, this is a long, really good South Park episode. Spaceball by Mel Brooks, which is like kind of the most popular Star Wars parody there is, and I actually haven't seen this yet, but it looks really good, so I'll try to get to that at some point. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, which is one of the movie series that I've seen the most in my entire life, and actually I'm pretty sure that Spider-Man 3 is the first movie that I saw in theaters. Actually, at least it's the first movie that I remember seeing in theaters. And a special mention to DVD manufacturers. If you're going to put a sticker on your DVD, make sure that it's easy to rip off, because I just completely ripped off the image of the front of the DVD, and it kind of pisses me off, because like I know this movie gets a bad rep. It's obviously like the least good movie of the three, but I think it's not nearly as bad as a lot of people say. I think it's pretty good. It does have some issues. I don't think that Venom should have been in this movie. If it had been just Sandman, it would have been a much better movie. But yeah, those movies are very important to me, and I really like them. Speaking of Spider-Man, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's probably the best Spider-Man movie ever made. It's a really, really well-made movie. And then this is going to be the last of the cartoon adaptations. SpongeBob the movie. I just talked about how much I loved watching SpongeBob as a kid. And again, just like all the other ones, it's like a really good, long SpongeBob episode. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Next is this Star Wars set that's got the original trilogy and the prequels. I'll be honest, don't really care about Star Wars all that much. I think they're nice, but I really don't think they're amazing movies whatsoever. The original trilogy is pretty fun, though. Again, this is going to be blasphemy. I haven't seen The Empire Strikes Back, which I know is like the best one. So I probably should see it before talking shit about Star Wars. At first, I wanted to wait until the new trilogy would come out before buying the Blu-rays. But I just realized like there was so much discourse about those movies, so many toxic conversations I saw online about those movies that I just thought like, man, I don't really care that much. I've only seen the first one in theaters. It was all right, you know. Superbad, which I think is an amazing comedy. Like it's put in the same category as a lot of pretty shitty comedies that came out at the same time, but like I think this is the best thing that Seth Rogen ever made. Michael Cera and Jonah Hill in this movie are a perfect comedy duo. Same thing can be said for Bill Hader and Seth Rogen as the two cops. Like, you know, the whole character of McLovin is hilarious. This is for my generation and the generation before me. Like, this is a huge classic. This is a must-watch comedy. Then a pretty underrated movie is Swiss Army Man by the Daniels, same guys that made Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I think I like this movie more. It's a really touching story about loneliness, about friendship, about death, about farts as well. And it's a really fun time. It's one of the most unique movies I've ever seen. I highly recommend it. Taxi Driver. I mean, I really like Martin Scorsese, so I literally had to have Taxi Driver. Yeah, this is one of the greats. The original Terminator. I just realized that I don't even have Terminator 2, so I would need to get it at some point. Terminator 1's good. Terminator 2 is better. The Thing, which I actually got to rewatch last month for Halloween, and it's one of the great horror films of all time. Some of the best special effects I've ever seen. Some like the practical effects in these movies are just stupidly good. And if you haven't seen this, if you like horror movies, you need to watch this. Tron, I haven't seen it. And honestly, I don't even care that much about it. But you know, it's kind of a classic, so I guess I should watch it at some point. I'll get to it one day. Total Recall, which is another classic that I haven't seen. It's looks to me like a pretty standard Schwarzenegger action movie. The Truman Show, I mean, everyone's seen this movie. Everyone likes this movie. It's one of the best Jim Carrey films. Good stuff. We're almost there. All right, almost done. Come on. Unbreakable by M. Night Shyamalan, which is actually the only Shyamalan movie I've ever seen. I've been trying to watch The Sixth Sense and Signs for a really long time, so I'll get to that at some point. It's a good movie. I don't have really that much else to say about it. It's a good superhero film. It's one of the first, I guess, sort of realistic superhero films that I think came out. This is a pretty interesting one. I'm gonna say the French name. Vampire humaniste cherche suicidaire consentant. I think in English. In English, it's humanist vampire seeking consenting suicidal person. What this is a Quebecer vampire comedy that came out last year, I think, and it's about this young teenage vampire, which I think she's like in her 60s or something, but she's a teenager. She lives with her parents, and her parents want her to start hunting to get blood and to get basically food for them. But she's, as the title says, she's a humanist. She doesn't want to kill people, just to eat them. And so her plan is to find a suicidal person who isn't gonna mind being killed. I think it's a really interesting, it's a really fun plot for the movie. The movie is really fun as well. It's a good comedy. It's not a very heavy movie like some other vampire films. It's a good time. The World's End, the last Edgar Wright movie that I own in my collection. I don't have Last Night in Soho. I don't know if I'm gonna get it at some point because it's not his best, but I still think it's pretty good, so I guess I'll try to get it at some point. Weird, the Al Yankovic movie. Whenever I see a movie that only comes out on streaming services that I really like, I always think if I can get this on Blu-ray, I will get it. So when I saw that this was actually coming out on Blu-ray, the first thing I did was get myself a copy. This is a really fun comedy. It's a parody of biopic, of musician biopic films, and I think that this is the best thing that a Weird Al movie could be. Everything that you could criticize about this movie really is just a criticism of those movies. For example, the fact that Daniel Radcliffe really doesn't look much like Weird Al. I think it's really funny because it's like a lot of those movies try to get a big name instead of trying to get an actor that really fits the character. There's a lot of really funny jokes in this. V for Vendetta, which is a movie that I haven't seen in years, but it's pretty good. It's pretty it's kind of 1984-esque. It's a good movie. Whiplash, which is one of the most stressful movies I've ever seen in my life. I'm so glad I'm not a jazz musician, for fuck's sake. Wolf of Wall Street, which I honestly think is one of the best Scorsese films. Man, I am fucking tired. Alright. Wolf of Wall Street's really good. Next, X-Men. I haven't seen this in years. Don't really care that much about it. I will probably get rid of this movie at some point in the future. And then, alright, I forgot to mention this, but the way I classify my Blu-rays is I have my regular Blu-rays all in one go, and then at the end I have my criterions. So this is my last Blu-ray before I talk about my criterions. Zodiac by David Fincher. I have a lot of David Fincher movies. I just realized that. He's a great director, and this is one of his best movies. The trio of Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr. is really cool. There's a lot of really amazing shots. There's the overhead shot of the taxi that everyone's seen. And I love movies that talk about serial killers. I don't like serial killers, unlike some people that have true crime podcasts, but it's a fascinating movie. All right, now the last part of this video, I'm gonna talk about my criterions. So let's go. 12 Angry Men, which is a Criterion must-have, one of the best written movies of all time. It's entirely set in one room, and it doesn't feel like it at all. It's really entertaining, especially for a movie from the 50s. Afterlife by Corey Eda. I talked about this in my last Criterion video, so just watch it if you want my opinion about it. All That Jazz, which if you've seen my other video, I still have my other copy. I don't know what to do with it. If you want it, like, comment below. I'll try to give you a good price for it. And if I get really desperate, I might just give it to someone for free. I don't know what to do with it. Barry Lyndon, one of my favorite Kubrick films, really, really good. Being John Malkovich, which is one of the movies that I never see people talk about when talking about Criterions. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Spike Jonze. I love Charlie Kaufman. I think he's like the best writer right now in Hollywood, basically. This is a really, really good movie. Blue Velvet, which is pretty much the most accessible David Lynch film there is. It's really good, and Cal MacLachlan is really good in this. Cure by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, which is one of my favorite Criterions that I own, one of my favorite movies in my entire Blu-ray collection, and it came out pretty recently. If you haven't seen this movie, you need to watch it. It's one of the best thrillers of all time. Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee, which is one of my favorite Criterions to have because it comes with a director's journal that Spike Lee wrote while making the movie, while writing it, and while shooting it. And it's really fascinating as someone who wants to become a filmmaker. It's really interesting to read what he was thinking while writing the movie. Doctor Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. This is a satirical comedy by Stanley Kubrick, made in the 60s. It's about like politics and the atomic bomb, that kind of stuff. And when I first saw it, I didn't know it was a comedy. So I watched this as a drama, and I didn't understand why everyone liked it so much. And then a couple of years later, I heard that it was actually a satirical comedy. And I thought, oh, that's probably why I didn't like it. So I need to rewatch it. It actually looks really good. Dreams by Akira Kurosawa, a very underrated Kurosawa movie. I think it's so imaginative. It's one of his like 2 or 3 last films, and it's really, really good. The Elephant Man, which I think is one of David Lynch's best movies. It's extremely devastating. It's so crushing. And John Hurt is amazing in this. Eyes Without a Face, a pretty cool 1960s French horror film. The French are surprisingly good with horror movies. There's some really good ones out there. The Fisher King by Terry Gilliam with Jeff Bridges and Robin Williams. I haven't seen this in a while too, but it's a really good film. Fantastic Mr. Fox by Wes Anderson, one of the best Wes Anderson films. I love the stop motion in this. Ghost Dog, which I talked about in my last video. The Grand Budapest Hotel, again by Wes Anderson. Probably his best film, in my opinion. It used to be in my top 10 favorite movies for a long time. The Great Dictator by Charlie Chaplin, one of the best movies about Nazis, one of the best movies about the Second World War, and it's even more fascinating because it's one of the few Second World War films that was made at the very beginning of the war. So like he talks about Adolf Hitler, but that's before he did a lot of the worst things that he did during the war. So it's a really fascinating film to watch. La Haine, which is one of the best, if not the best, French film ever made. It's a movie kind of in the same category as Do the Right Thing and Boys in the Hood, except it's made in France, and it's so well made. It's such an angry movie as well, and it's kind of sad that this is the only really good thing that the director ever made. Harakiri, one of the great samurai films, a really well-made story. Harold and Maude, which is my favorite film of all time. I actually was able to get the Criterion right before it got out of print, and I'm really happy I have it. It's such a weird, such a fun, and such a sweet yet kind of sad film. I highly recommend it. Then House. House is like one of the movies that you have to get if you really like Criterion films. It's a batshit fucking crazy movie. It's a Japanese horror film that relies a lot on experimental film techniques. There's a lot of weird animation in this. There's some really cool special effects, and it's a horror movie that feels kind of like an anime more than anything, but it's really cool. Ikiru by Kurosawa, which is devastating, as everyone knows. Not my favorite by Kurosawa, but it's still a masterpiece, which is making me realize that I need to get High and Low, because that's a really, really good one. Lady Snowblood and The Last Temptation of Christ, which I talked about in my last video. I still haven't seen the second one for Lady Snowblood, so I'll try to do that pretty soon. A Matter of Life and Death by Powell and Pressburger, which is one of the most beautiful movies ever made. Like, that's the thing with Powell and Pressburger, is that they made movies at the beginning of when you could make color films. So it was at a time where like making color films was a privilege more than anything, and they really used the colors in this, and they made some of the best looking, most colorful movies ever made, which is something that I feel you don't see enough of today. Like, I feel like too many movies take color for granted, and it's really cool to see like what it was when it was some of the first like actual color films of all time. And it's also a really good love story. Memories of Murder, which is again, of course, one of the best Bong Joon-ho films ever made. And it's crazy that this was his second film, because I actually watched his first film, Barking Dogs Never Bite, last week, and it was good, but it by far was the worst thing that I've seen by Bong Joon-ho, which, coming from Bong Joon-ho, you know, it's still pretty good. But to think that only 2 or 3 years later he made this, which is such a masterpiece, is pretty crazy. All right, it's time for the last shelf. We're almost done. Let's go. Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapter, a biopic about the Japanese author Yukio Mishima, who actually I started to read some of his books this year. I read The Temple of the Golden Pavilion, which I think is one of the greatest books that I've ever heard in my life. It's really amazing. And actually last night I finished reading The Sailor That Fell from Grace with the Sea, which is one of his biggest books, which I didn't like as much as The Golden Pavilion, but was really quite something. It was a really great book, and this is a really cool movie actually about his life, but also about his work in general and the themes that he talked about a lot in his work. It's a really great film if you want to get to know Yukio Mishima as an author. Parasite, which is the best Bong Joon-ho movie. To me, this movie is the pinnacle of perfection in cinema. Of course, perfection is kind of it's a vague topic. It's, you know, it's something that doesn't really exist, but it's one of those movies that, like, I can't think of anything bad about this movie. I think the directing, the writing, the actors, the editing as well. Like, this is probably the best editing I've ever seen in a movie in my entire life. This is perfect. This is a perfect movie that doesn't have any issues, in my opinion. This is quite something. Pink Flamingos, that's a really fun criterion to have, because it comes with a barf bag, 2 barf bags actually, for a pretty gross movie. I love John Waters. I haven't seen that many of his movies, but I think his world and his vision is really fun and really cool. Police Story 1 and 2, that's another criterion that I don't see a lot of people picking up. The first one, Police Story 1, is one of the greatest action film that was ever made, and it manages to be both an amazing action film with some amazing stunts and amazing fight choreographies, which is only to be expected by Jackie Chan and his stunt team, but also it's extremely funny, and he manages to make the movie funny through the fight scenes, which is really something unique to Hong Kong action films. And it also manages to be extremely dramatic during certain scenes. There's one scene in particular toward the end of the movie, which is really amazing. One of my favorite scenes from this movie. The Princess Bride, which is another really cool criterion in itself, because it's made with the same material that they make books with. I guess it's like fabric or something. And the criterion booklet is actually attached to it like it was a book. And you get the Blu-ray at the end. Yeah, I think The Princess Bride is a really fun movie. It's really charming. It's also very funny, and it's a great take on fairy tales. Really like it. My Own Private Idaho, which is one of the best LGBTQ films I've ever seen. Gus Van Sant is really amazing at that. The duo, Keanu Reeves and River Phoenix, their story is so devastating, but it's It's a really quite an amazing movie. I really liked it. The Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore, two early Wes Anderson films. I actually really like Rushmore. I think it's one of my favorites by him. And The Royal Tenenbaums obviously is also one of his best. Everyone knows that. It's two really amazing movies. Then we have Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, which is, it's a very good movie about fascism. It's fucking gross. It's very tough to watch. It's one of the most disturbing films I've ever seen, and I'm very curious to watch some more Pasolini movies. Seconds by John Frankenheimer. This was a blind buy when I first got this. Just because I saw a lot of people talking about it in Criterion Closet videos, and this is I don't know who I saw say it, but this is kind of like a movie version of a Twilight Zone episode, which is extremely accurate, especially since I started watching the Twilight Zone pretty recently. It's a really good movie. It's a good sort of like thriller / horror film, and I highly recommend it. It's not really talked about that much. Seven Samurai, which is the must-have Criterion. If you want to get into the Criterion Collection, get this movie. It's 3.5 hours, but it's one of the coolest movies I've ever seen in my life. I think it's Akira Kurosawa's best film. This is quite literally a masterpiece. Solaris by Tarkovsky, which was the first Tarkovsky movie that I saw. I love his space. I thought at first that I wouldn't get into his movies because they're quite slow, but they're slow in a way that's almost relaxing, almost soothing in a way. It's like it's kind of like the movie version of watching a meditation video on YouTube. It's just it doesn't rush anything. It's just take its time, and it tells a really good story really well. So I really like this. And then Stalker, obviously. Stalker is my favorite by him. It's a really good movie that I really want to watch. I want to rewatch pretty soon, so I'll try to get to that. Tampopo by Juzo Itami, which is a really good Japanese comedy about this woman that owns a ramen shop, and that is pretty bad at making ramen. It's a fun movie. It's the best love letter to food I've ever seen. I highly recommend it as well. That's a really good feel-good movie too. You're just gonna have a good time watching it. And finally, my last Criterion is War and Peace, which I talked about in my last video. I still haven't seen it. I want to see it soon, but that's that for my Criterions. The last thing that I have on my shelves are two VHS that I bought at a record store this summer that I want to talk about. The first one, so I've got the French version, so it's got the French titles on it. The first one is Heavy Metal, which is an animated movie that came out in the 80s. It's got a lot of metal bands in the soundtrack. It's got like Black Sabbath and a lot of old bands that I'm not really familiar with, but it's got Black Sabbath, and I like Black Sabbath, so that's cool. And last thing is Army of Darkness by Sam Raimi, which is the third movie of the original Evil Dead trilogy. I'm a massive fan of the original Evil Dead trilogy. This is my least favorite one, so it kind of sucks that it's the only one that I have on physical media, but it's such a cool poster. I think it's so cool to have this movie on VHS. Like when I saw this in the store, it was an immediate buy. I think it's a really cool film to own. All right, I'm almost done. I just have a few things to add that don't fit on those shelves. First of all, there's one Criterion that I didn't talk about because it didn't fit here, so I can only put it on the top, which is my beautiful World of Wong Kar-wai box set, which has the essential Wong Kar-wai movies. It's got all of his great films. Wong Kar-wai is one of the great Chinese, Hong Kong filmmakers. I really love his movies, and I think the only ones that I haven't seen in those are Happy Together and his first movie, which I forgot the title, but I'll have to watch those at some point. I really want to rewatch Chungking Express 2, which is my favorite by him. Next, I kind of mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but this is Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is one of the best cartoons of all time. It's so good, so surprisingly well written. This is my 30th anniversary Back to the Future set, which actually lights up though I think, well, the batteries run out, but there's a little button here that you press and lights up. It's pretty cool. It comes with an art book about the making of the movies, and it also comes with a DVD of the 1990s Back to the Future cartoon, which kind of looks like shit, but I'll try to watch it at some point. It looks pretty fun. Then I didn't mention this at all during my video, but I had to get the Lord of the Rings trilogy. This is the extended edition. I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and this is a must-have in my collection. I've got one final thing to talk about, which is something that I got very recently. It's a Twilight Zone box set. I just talked about the Twilight Zone with the movie Seconds. That's a set of all 150 Twilight Zone episodes. I just started watching it pretty recently. It's really cool. I'm really liking the show so far. There's a lot of really well thought of and really cool ideas in there. I'll just put it right there. Yeah, it fits well. All right. And then last thing before I end this video, I just want to mention that there are two Blu-rays that I bought that haven't come in the mail yet. Hi, it's been about 6 days later, and I just got a few Blu-rays in the mail, so I thought I'd just quickly update you guys on it. So, first things first, I got Incendie by Denis Villeneuve. It's one of his highest rated movies, and I just saw it for the first time last week, and it completely blew me off. Like, I did not expect this movie to be this good. I was so impressed by it, so much that it's now, I think, the 6th film in my top 10 favorite films of all time. It was really quite something. I didn't expect to love it so much, and I did. So I highly recommend that you watch it. I think I bought this like 2 hours after finishing the movie, and I'm very glad I own this physically. Then this month is currently a Criterion Collection 50% sale at Barnes & Noble. So I didn't get too much stuff. I just got one thing, but one big thing, and it's the America Lost and Found box set. Now, what this is basically is it's a box set of 7 movies, I think, that were all made in the late 60s, early 70s, during the period of the New Hollywood, which is one of my favorite periods in cinema history. I think there were a lot of really amazing movies from this era, and this comes with a bunch of vastly different movies. There's a movie starring the Monkees, the rock band. There's a bunch of movies starring Jack Nicholson, and even, I don't remember which one, but there's one that's directed by Jack Nicholson. And this is a complete blind buy. I haven't seen anything from this box set, so I hope I'm gonna like them, or else it's gonna be like a bad use of my money. But most of those movies here look very promising, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to be like. So yeah, I'm very happy about this. This is only my second Criterion box set, and yeah, that's all I had to say. So back to the video, and this is it. This is all I had to talk about. I've been recording for an hour and 22 minutes. I am fucking tired. It was still day outside when I started recording, and now it's completely pitch black. My voice is sore. You can probably hear the difference in my voice between right now and the beginning of the video. But this was fun to make still. I'm glad to talk about my Blu-rays. I'm very happy to have the collection that I have, and I'm really excited about the idea of it growing even more in the future. I think the physical media is very important in cinema, and the idea of it disappearing really kind of scares me and really pisses me off. So I'm going to try my best to get the biggest physical media collection that I can have, so that I don't have to complain about trying to watch a movie when it's not on any streaming services that I own. And that's all I had to say. So thanks a lot for watching this video. If you made it to the end, you're a real one. Shout out to you. You can like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Letterboxd. I always update it whenever I watch a movie. And I'm gonna try to make another video in less than 3 months, so we'll see how I do there. But that's all I had to say. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.